Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Welcome back to the Fort Worth 148 podcast. My name is Evve Kirkendall. I am a past master of Fort Worth 148 and the chaplain for this year.
This is Brandy Patton, current Worshipful Master of Fort Worth 148.
And this is Cody Cox. I am the current Senior Warden of Fort Worth Lodge, number 148.
Gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting and spicy episode of the Fort Worth 148 podcast. I know we haven't gotten... spicy. I know we haven't gotten any feedback yet because we haven't actually released our last episode that we talked about dues.
They're not going to know that.
But we don't have the context of how it was received, so we're flying blind in this conversation.
We're time traveling.
We're time traveling right now.
We jumped in our TARDIS.
We jumped in our TARDIS. And
wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Yeah, we are now sometime in the future, and we are excited to be with you today. Last time, you know that we talked about dues and our view on some ideas for best practices, how to structure your dues so that you're covering the cost of expenses, minimizing the amount of fundraising that you have to do, nickel and diming your members so that you don't drive away interest, all of those things. We are super interested in your views on it. So if you still haven't heard that episode, go listen to it. It is a kind of a, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call it spicy, but it was definitely, we broached some subjects that were a little probably verboten in many lodges.
It's some family business that oftentimes you don't necessarily want to discuss.
It's one of those difficult conversations that we all know that there's going to be that one member who's going to have a strong opinion in your lodge when you bring it up. If you haven't had these conversations...
It's weird how it's always one.
It's always one or two.
But it's a different one every time.
It's like a little virus that spreads.
That's right.
Grumpy Past Master. You guys pick somebody to be the Grumpy Past Master.
What we do is we get together and we vote in the North who's going to be the Grumpy Past Master this week.
That's right.
Sean usually wins.
And there's either a lapel pin or there's a sash. We put a sash.
A sash with lapel pins.
A sash with 3 or 4 lapel pins.
Yes.
Because we want them to look like
we
want them to look like they are a leader from North Korea. Oh, speaking of, by the way, just in case you're listening to this one, there was a podcast a few times ago that we talked about that Brandy had mentioned there was somebody from North Korea listening. And I mentioned the fact that maybe it was their fearless leader listening to us. I know that I sent it to both Evve and Brandy, but I found a meme where the leader of North Korea is sitting next to a guy at a computer, and it's mentioned something about you think that you're working under pressure, that kind of thing.
Sharing that.
Yes. So that was us on the Masonic podcast with Kim Jong-un listening in. So
it's weird. I got this random text from a former NBA player.
Oh, God. The worm. Yes.
At any rate, gentlemen, we are going to wade into a conversation today that I have some really strong opinions about. I alluded to it on our last episode, and that is the subject of endowments. Endowments have become quite, I think, a thorn in my brain, especially after the information that was posted on Texas Freemasons breaking down the number of endowments, the number of service-exempt people, and the numbers regarding paying members. And we all know, we talked about it on the last episode, that those numbers are not exact. We know that there's some people those represents memberships, not people, and that's not always going to be a great representation of actual lodge breakdown.
Good summary is less than half of your members actually pay dues.
Yes, and the summary is 47% of members of the state of Texas actually pay dues, and then 33% are endowed, and 20% are service exempt. And my take is...
Does overlap a little bit.
Yeah, there is a little bit of overlap, but by and large, if we look at this number as representative of Texas Masonry in general with a little bit of some fuzzy edges, let's just acknowledge the fuzzy edges, I think we can all together say the service exempt people, we are happy to say that those people are service exempt.
Absolutely.
They have put in their time.
We do not begrudge them
I
one
do
bit.
not begrudge them.
So just for clarity's sake, service exempt in Texas, 50 years as a Master Mason, dues paying and good standing, or lives at TMRC.
Yes.
Right. And so those people are not expected to pay dues and because of their contributions over the course of their lifetime. And I think that's great. I also think that regardless of how endowments are structured, how we understand them, what we get on the back end of them in terms of finances, I do not begrudge a single person who is endowed for their endowments, regardless of the circumstances that they receive them under.
Absolutely.
Even if it was a horrible investment for a lodge, I still think that they were sold a bill of goods, and we have to honor that bill of goods, which is they were told that they are going to get a lifetime membership to Freemasonry where they are not expected to pay dues ever again. And I think that we have to be...
I believe it was money, again, not dues, just to nitpick.
Regardless, they don't pay dues in our lodges when they
Right.
get an endowment. I think that it's important that we honor that, even if it was a bad investment. And we should never begrudge those people or make them feel like they are bad or a burden or somehow a nuisance to us. I value every single one of those members, and I don't have a problem. I want to start this conversation off because I think I'm the one with the hot take here. Cody and Brandy are looking at me with a little trepidation. I think I'm the only one that has any hot takes about this and really strong opinions about it.
Oh, no, I've got strong opinions too.
Good, I'm glad. But I don't have a problem with endowments. I really don't. I don't.
And let's be honest, in transparency, just so that the listeners know, I am endowed at 2 of the 3 lodges that I belong to. I'm a dues-paying member of Fort Worth Lodge number 148, and I'm endowed at 2 of my other lodges.
I am endowed in 1 lodge, and I am dues paying member at Fort Worth 148.
0 endowments over here. I am
Purely a dues
sure as the white snow.
And so
Driven south.
I think that and I will open up this conversation by saying,
Not pure dues paying. I was secretary for a few years. It was
that's
exempt.
true. But I still think
I donated my dues to
Yeah,
someone
the
else.
services you
Oh
did.
yeah, there were dues definitely paid by being secretary.
You paid dues. It was blood, sweat, and tears. I will also admit very freely here, because of the ways that dues are structured and the cost that I incurred as purchasing this endowment from the lodge that I was first initiated and raised to Master Mason. Had I known what endowments were really about, I would never have become endowed. I feel horrible about having been endowed there because I have become a financial burden, and I send them a check every year for my per capita to the Grand Lodge because I don't want them taxed for the benefit of having me on their rolls. I don't think it's fair. I don't think that it's right. I think that it is a disservice. And I think that the fact that that $500 endowments even exist to this day is a travesty. And so I want to start the conversation about endowments with all of our cards on the table here. And I also want to start, I think, with the conversation of what do we think endowments should be about? When we think about, if we were to divorce ourselves from our emotions for a moment and think to ourselves in Freemasonry, if we were developing an endowment system, what should that endowment system do for the lodge? What should it do for the Grand Lodge? And what should it do for the member? So let's start with that conversation and kind of see where we land.
When I think about endowments, I think about the idea of it is a money gift that is given to an organization that is there in perpetuity and is meant to generate income for that particular organization in order to do things. So for the most part, before I came into Masonry, when I would think about endowments, you would hear the word endowment all the time, like at universities, or you would hear it on like PBS or something like that. And let's be real honest, most of the time endowments were named after dead people who left behind money in order for particular things to happen. So when I came into Masonry and found out about endowments at the lodge that could be purchased by living people, my brain wrapped a different way around that. I wasn't quite sure about that one. And so that's the baseline where I was coming from. This idea of endowments are gifts from dead people in order to do particular things.
So not to put too fine a point on it, but what do you think that with that understanding, what should be the expectation that endowments do for the member in Masonry? What should it do for the Grand Lodge, and what should it do for the lodge itself?
Okay, so if in that bead, what I would say is that an endowment should be a gift from somebody to the lodge in order to help the lodge generate income off of which to operate. In the terms of Grand Lodge, the endowment should be there in order to pay my per capita for however many years that I am a member. And then after I'm gone, that money should still be there to help keep the lodge running and have some sort of residual income.
So what I'm hearing is, just to be clear,
Yeah.
is that the primary beneficiary of your vision of endowments
Is
should
the
be
lodge.
not
Is the
Grand
lodge.
Lodge and not
No.
the individual.
No.
I just want to put a point on that. So Brandy, same question to you. In your vision, how you understand it, and it might be different than mine and Cody's, which is fine. How would you view the purpose that endowments have for an individual member, for the Grand Lodge, and for the constituent lodge?
An endowment should pay for what that member would contribute over their lifetime. Be a substitute for it.
While they're alive.
While they're alive, yes. That's what endowment should be. I'm 50 years old, so I've got another 40 years in me. 40 years of dues. That should be what the endowment is.
Okay. And that should pay out over the course of your living membership,
Right.
over the next 40 years.
And it's not a realistic number. 20 is probably more palatable. So was it 16? What would that be?
I think the
$16,000?
average man in America now lives to be about 71, 72.
But I'm above
However,
average, okay?
But
So
I'm
just
very above average.
Yeah, my dad made it to 97.
So you can go anywhere from 71 to 90, 100 years old, depending on your
Yeah.
genetics.
It-
But
it-
let's say ostensibly,
The-
it should make up for the difference in what you do and dues that you would normally have paid during that period.
Essentially, yes.
Should there be any beneficiary in terms of Grand Lodge in your view?
That is a cost of doing business as a lodge, yes.
So it should cover your per capita as well as
Yes.
all that stuff.
The minimum standards of being a member of my lodge for my lifetime is what that should cover.
Okay. So for instance, at Fort Worth 148, your suggestion is that an endowment should cover the dues that you would normally be assessed right now, which covers per capita,
Right.
both Grand
Yeah.
Lodge per capita to the Temple Association, plus the operating
Yeah,
expenses.
when a brother joins, let's just throw a number on it, 20 years.
Okay.
So $400, so $8,000.
Yeah. So it should cover that amount over the lifetime
Yeah.
before you pass away. Okay.
And we could live on that.
Absolutely. And I don't disagree with you on that. I tend to be of that same definition. I think that if an endowment is going to exist, and we're going to offer it to living members and give them as a benefit of that a dues-free existence in Freemasonry, then that endowment has to cover the cost of that member's would-be dues for the remainder of their life until they become service exempt.
The variable, though, is you're saying dues. There's more to being a member of a lodge than just paying dues.
I understand that, but in terms of the finances, because an endowment is all about finance, there's obviously there's three elements to everybody's membership. There's time, talents, and treasure. The treasure part is what endowments address. So what I'm thinking here is the financial contributions that a member would normally make, and I never want to reduce anybody to just monetary contributions, but for this conversation, just I think
We're
money is
talking
what we're
dollar
talking money.
signs.
We're talking dollars and cents here. I think that an endowment should cover what the lodge would have accrued from that member being a dues paying member.
I think the root of the problem is it was sold to benefit you personally, not the organization, and that's how it is.
I think it's being marketed to benefit an individual by saying, even the little Grand Lodge flyers that say, free membership or a lifetime membership, which I think is gross that Grand Lodge is doing that. I'm going to be real transparent about that. That is a gross marketing strategy that should end post haste. It should end 10 minutes
It
ago.
needs a lot of qualifiers.
It needs a lot of qualifiers, and it also is completely disconnected and divorced from the reality on the ground in most lodges. Most lodges right now have exorbitantly low endowments. Even that Facebook post that was posted on Texas Freemasons
Right.
5 days ago from the time that we're recording, so probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago if you're listening to it right now on your podcast platform, even in the comments section, it was pointed out that most of those endowments, or I don't want to say most, but a great many of those were $500 endowments, which is, it makes my blood boil.
I, for
to
one,
think
am
about that.
thankful it was $500 because they could have set it at $100. So
Well,
at least you're covering the Grand Lodge per capita,
Well,
which is the
no,
reason.
But we're not covering the Grand Lodge.
Well,
per
at
capita.
$500 you are.
No, you're not.
No.
You're only covering $25.
And
based
here's-
on this year's returns of $5, that's $25.
You're
Grand Lodge
negative-
per capita is $27.50.
Yeah, you're negative $2. You're right.
So you're every lodge per $500 endowment is losing $2.50 per
Well,
member.
thankfully it's only that, and it's not
But-
the $25 per member.
But that's if you only look at, this is my heart, this is my real heartburn about this, because we're only looking at it in terms of the per capita loss. We also have to factor in
Grand
that-
Lodge per capita.
The Grand Lodge per capita. You also have to factor in that you're losing the potential Temple Association fees for us at Fort Worth 148, which is another. It used to be
$35 a person.
but it's gone up.
$37.50.
Now
Yeah.
it's now I think it's about $60 per person after we get
So
to
50
the
or 60
mandatory
or
minimum.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's $50 or $60 per person. So $50 or $60 plus the $27.50. That's how much we're losing per $500 endowment. And we used to have $500
Right.
endowments. We have a great number of our members who are endowed. And again, not begrudging them a single thing. This was the lodge's bad for doing this.
The way it was sold, you'd be silly not to buy it.
Yeah, it was sold to all the members as not having to pay dues ever again. And we as a lodge are getting $25 back from Grand Lodge. And then
yeah.
we're having to send $27.50 to Grand Lodge plus an extra $50 or $60 to the MTA. So we as a lodge, because that member is not paying dues, are losing the cost of the dues, which is $400 a year, plus the $70 or $80 for the assessment.
Right, and
per
one thing
year.
that I was going to say is in this conversation, for those of you that are in the grand jurisdiction of Texas, if you have not gotten onto Grandview lately and looked at your feed, the numbers and things that we're referring to right now when we're talking about the $5 and all that is going to be found in August's newsletter from the Grand Secretary. It's underneath endowment distribution. If you've never, I'm encouraging you as a former secretary, as a former worshipful master, as a former treasurer, former DDGM, if you have not gone and looked at the Grand Secretary's communications on a regular basis, you need to be, because that's where we're getting a lot of this information. So please make sure that you're checking out that one. So if you're unaware of that one, the endowment distribution was published. Each mature unit was $5. In case you're unaware, a unit is $100. Most lodges, their endowment's $500. So that would mean 5 units. 5 times 5 is 25.
And that's where we get that $25 assessment, or that $25 return, and then the Grand Lodge assessment is $27.50. And so if you have an endowment that is $500, your lodge is paying $2.50 on your behalf for the privilege of having you as a member on
the
their
rolls.
So they are losing money on you. So last episode we used Lodge Cody or Lodge Brandy or Lodge Evve that has 100 members, and it has operating expenses of about $10,000 per year. And we used this breakdown that we saw of the pie chart on Texas Freemasons, that 47% of the membership is what is dues paying members. They're the people who are going to cover this $10,000, which means that if you have 100 members, you're not covering the cost.
No.
Only 47 members are going to be covering that cost, which means if you want $10,000...
Well, 67 members. 67 members would be covering the cost.
No, it's 67 are exempt from dues.
47%.
47%.
47. Yes, never mind. 47 members are paying the dues.
Yes, and they are the ones who will be responsible for covering that $10,000 exam.
Okay.
That means that per member, if you want your 47 members to cover the cost of the expenses for $10,000, that means each member is going to have to pay $212 per person.
Right.
To cover $10,000. The 33 members who are endowed at a $500 endowment, they are going to get in return $825. The Grand Lodge is going to assess a per capita of $907. That means that Lodge Cody, Brandy, and Evve is going to have lost $82 last year just in assessments. When we factor in the $212 plus the $82 of assessments that we lost, that means per member we are down $294 per member for that 33 members. And if I look at that for those 33 members, that brings the total loss of our lodge last year from dues and the assessments to $9,702 of lost revenue. That is $298 short of our operating expenses of our hypothetical lodge. And to suggest that endowments are a good idea is mind-boggling to me, because the preponderance of information and responses that I've gotten when I talk about this online or otherwise is that somehow people are under the impression that endowments should be cheap or inexpensive. And it seems to me that nothing could be more opposite than that. Because if we're going to use my definition or what it sounds like Brandy described to me, and please don't let me misrepresent your position on this, but if we are going to have endowments that cover the cost of our membership in a lodge, then that means that $500 certainly isn't doing it. We're losing money. $1,000 barely covers the amount of the Grand Lodge assessments and maybe a little bit extra. In our lodge, it wouldn't cover all the assessments.
$4,000 covers pretty much.
It takes $4,000 to cover our assessments and a little bit extra, but it still doesn't cover the cost of the missing dues of $400 a year. We would need a current endowment of around 10 grand for our lodge to be able to pay all the assessments and still make the money that we would normally make off of that member for lodge dues while they're alive. And that is mind-boggling to me. And if I were to go to any lodge and say, you need to make your endowments $10,000,
they'll tell you you're crazy.
They would. People have said that I'm crazy for even suggesting it.
There are pitchforks and
people
things
would
ready
come after
for
me
you.
with pitchforks and torches. Mm-hmm. I would be Frankenstein's monster
Kill
if I
the beast.
suggest. Exactly. But when we look at the numbers, I find it really difficult to argue with these numbers. That who is making out with this? And I'm just going to say it too. Last year at Grand Lodge, we said that we're going to start recognizing members who buy extra units. Mm-hmm. Which seems to me the biggest admission that our endowment system is terrible. It is a terrible investment.
Terrible for the lodge.
Terrible for the lodge. The only people, and I said this online, and I'm going to say it here. The only beneficiary of our current endowment structure is the Grand Lodge. And it's coming at the expense of our constituent lodges. Lodges are suffering because the endowment system has not been really well explained. The way that it is structured makes it seem like it's a great benefit to individuals, but the lodges are getting taken to the cleaners on it. Yeah. And they're getting taken to the cleaners both directions, from the members not paying dues and from the dues assessments or the membership assessments from Grand Lodge.
Well, and I think what we're also talking about here is the fact that we have. Yeah, I know that in our conversations and when I've talked to people throughout Texas and things like that, there are a lot of members that have not seriously gone underneath the surface and really done the math when it comes to an endowment. They only look at the endowment as positive, and the spin on it is positive. But again, the argument that we're also looking at here is when you go below the surface, when you go into the math, doesn't quite math the way that you think it does. So, yeah,
Well, I also think that, like you were saying, endowments largely have been understood in our culture, as something that dead people leave to the living for some sort of legacy of perpetuity. I think of Amon Carter, a member of Fort Worth 148, who passed away a number of years ago. He was a very wealthy, I think, television magnate.
And rancher and all that.
Yeah, he had his hands in a lot of buckets, and he has his name now on the football stadium at TCU. He also has a number of museums here in Fort Worth.
And half my property, mineral rights.
Yeah, he was a very wealthy man. And
Still lives large in Fort Worth.
He has a largesse in Fort Worth that is well known. He was instrumental in setting up public school funding for Texas. He was the man for a while. And those are the kind of things, when I think of endowments, that's what I think about. I don't think about endowments being a beneficiary to living members. So our endowments that we have for non-living members, those members that are not being assessed per capita, I think that those are great things, and I'm not against that. But living members, they were never designed for living members.
You got to clarify, the endowment is for living members, but it was endowed previously, not by them. TCU's endowment, for example, they're $2.5 billion. But what's it cost to go to TCU a semester? You don't go for free.
You certainly don't. For an undergraduate degree at TCU, it's like $425,000 right now.
Yeah, so $100K a year plus a little bit, you're still paying to go. But they've still got this huge endowment war chest. It's great. That's what endowments are meant for, is to support the organization.
Not to use those endowments for capital investments and to build new buildings.
And they live off the interest on that fund.
Absolutely. But what we're dealing with now is a situation where our living members are endowed and not getting any sort of financial compensation for the lodge, and lodges can't live like that. We can't live paying money out.
It wasn't understood when it was sold.
Yeah, it seems it was sold very poorly, and maybe it was sold right. I don't know. I wasn't a member whenever they were out peddling endowments when it first was developed. But I do know that the reality on the ground is most lodges don't understand it. Most lodges don't understand how badly it's hurting them. And by the time that they recognize how badly it's hurting them, the damage is already done, and suddenly they can't afford to operate.
And I think what we can say here too is that if you're listening to this podcast and you were around when endowments first came into being, if you can help us understand, like, how are they explained to you, how are they sold to you, those types of things, that may help us in our understanding of this.
Sure, I would love to hear from members who have a little bit more insight.
We want to hear that as well.
Because it really blows my mind. I'm thinking about Fort Worth 148. That's the front of mind. Because I know what a bad investment it has been we had a $500 investment up until 2016? Help me out with that. 2016, 2017? No, it was before that. When did we go up on dues? Because it happened at about the same time. You remember, Brandy?
It was the end of your year.
No, we were paying $365 for a long time before that.
We went up whenever the temple system went up. So that's actually this year.
We went from $365 to $400, but I'm talking about when we went from up to $365.
Oh, I wouldn't remember. I have no idea.
I know that it happened a number of years ago because I've heard other of our more senior members, past masters, talk about it.
Yeah, 2021.
But we used to have, during that period of time, $500 endowments. Mm-hmm. And a great percentage, a huge percentage of our members took advantage of that $500 endowment. So right now, the dues-paying members we have really overshadowed by the number of endowed members. Right. And we have often talked about that Fort Worth 148 has the financial stability to weather that issue, but it is still a major issue that still comes up every once in a while.
Right.
And it's painful to look at some of the numbers that we have to deal with when it comes to our dues-paying members versus our service-exempt and endowed members. Mm-hmm. It's not 40. I guarantee you that we are not being funded by 47% of our members. It's much closer to like 15%.
And I think that's probably the case at a lot of lodges where they have a large amount of endowed members.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that, again, if we're talking about endowments and the numbers that you have and units and stuff like that, there are lodges out there, and in fact, I'm a member of one and an endowed member at a lodge, where the endowments, when we get the check back, is actually a good check because we've been in existence for so long and we had so many of our members that are no longer with us that did purchase endowments. So it's something of a positive for that one. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say we're probably one of, I have no idea on the number, but I'm going to say few, where maybe this is a positive. for that one. I think the other thing that we want to pepper this conversation with is that when we talk about Grand Lodge and things like that, I think we also need to think about the fact that the three of us that are sitting at this table have votes at Grand Lodge. So if we're finding things that are wrong with the system, we as members of the Grand West should be thinking about how to address this and things like that. And I think we're going to get to that. But I do want to pepper the conversation with that thought that when Evve or myself or Brandy, when we talk about the Grand Lodge, we're also keeping in the back of our minds that we at some point are kind of members of the Grand Lodge because we are members of the Grand West. And this is a conversation, again, that family conversation that we need to have.
Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of people who are fans of endowment. They defend the endowment structure, and it's for whatever reason and for whatever their thought process is behind it. I want to believe in it because I know that endowed members that have passed away are huge benefits. That is the purpose, is to leave a legacy of support. Once you are no longer an active member and you lay down, your working tools continue to work for the lodge past your time. And I think that is what endowments ultimately should be. But the way that they've been sold to us in terms of it being a lifetime membership and you don't have to pay dues anymore and all the Grand Lodge law that is accreted around that idea, it just feels something is wrong and that it's not working the way we want it to.
And with that one, okay, so we've put into play where we sit in mindsets to endowments. We know that endowments are a thing. So how do we, as individual lodges, how do we work within the status quo with endowments? Like, where do we go from here?
You make it a reasonable price that can actually justify its existence, first of all.
Now, when you say make it a reasonable price, like, you mean to the lodge members?
If you're going to sell an endowment today, you need to figure out what it costs to have one member that year and make your endowment where it covers that person's cost, which we came up with $5,000, I believe, with the 5% return would cover what it costs to have one Master Mason in our lodge.
I just did a little bit of number crunching here while Brandy and Cody were speaking. If your lodge happens to be, your lodge dues are $100, it will take 20 units for your lodge to get the return of $100.
$2,000.
Which is $2,000. So for every $100 you're in your lodge for every $100 in dues, your lodge is going to have an endowment of $2,000. So if you have a $200 dues, you need $4,000 endowments. If you have $300, it goes up to $6,000. So you see how this suddenly gets to be up in, we have $400 dues, so we need $8,000 dues to make up, $8,000 endowments to make up for the lost revenue that membership's endowment
And that's
costs.
today dollars, not 10 years from now dollars.
And here's the interesting thing, what you're saying there as well, Evve, is I'll go back to what I said at the beginning, is that if your lodge has that $100 dues, and you have that endowment at $2,000, that will cause a break even. And if we go back to what I said, when you look at the definition of endowments, it is to cause an income. So even at $2,000, you're still not doing what an endowment is supposed to do and create income for the lodge. You're just paying enough to where the lodge doesn't
Isn't
lose
losing
any
anything.
money, but they're not gaining any money. So
Right.
the endowment right there is actually it's actually not doing what it's supposed to do to begin with anyway.
And that's also predicated on a return of what we got this year. There have been years where we've gotten less than $5. And there might be years where we get double or triple that, depending on the investment strategies that the Grand
How
Lodge
the
is
markets work
deploying.
and what happens.
Yeah. So that is fundamentally based on the numbers I'm running, how this has to shake out for lodges to benefit from this.
So a smarter way of doing it would be to have your $500 endowment to cover the Grand Lodge and then have your own investment fund with it. Problem is you can't make that a condition of being a member. Or can you?
My understanding is that Grand Lodge law prohibits people from having anything that competes with the endowment system. And so there are definitely loopholes around that you can get it so that it's not competing with the Grand Lodge endowment system if you have something like that set up.
Because, so we're talking a 5% return, which, I mean, our Thriving account gets 10 to 12 on a bad year. The math just doesn't work out. You're basically eating 7% for someone else to handle it for you.
For some lodges, let's be honest, for some lodges, they don't have members that maybe are mathematically minded like that. So maybe they need to forego some of that to have somebody handle that for them. I'm not saying this every lodge.
There's also the image, it's not as risky.
Yeah.
Because it's the Grand Lodge, big, beautiful building. It's not going to go anywhere, theoretically. Yeah, but if you invest it in the right bonds, it's not going anywhere either.
But here's the thing. I'd have to go back into the law book and look at it and see. But I think what we're also talking about when we say working within the status quo is what is the difference, and somebody that's listening out there, maybe you can help us with this one. Is there a way of working within the status quo where, say, for instance, somebody has endowed and they're listening to this podcast and they're going, maybe that wasn't such a good idea, and they want to help the lodge with making sure that things are getting taken care of. What other kind of vehicles are out there for that member to say, you know what, here's an extra $50. Can a lodge take that $50 and put it into their own savings account, a money market, or something like that? Is that allowable within Grand Lodge law, or are you setting up something that is competing with that one?
I think in that circumstance that you're giving an example of, you're essentially encouraging the member to donate above and beyond money. And what the lodge decides to do with above and beyond donations is what I'm talking about in competing with the endowment system is, let's say, if you buy, you can buy a lifetime membership to Lodge, Cody, Brandy, and Evve and pay $2,000 for it. That is competing directly with the endowment system. And so that very well could be in violation of Grand Lodge law, to my understanding. But I'm not an expert on Grand Lodge law, so don't come.
But a lodge could take, say, for instance, that extra $50 that the brother sends in, and put it into
an investment account.
That the lodge set up themselves.
Yes, general fund.
Yeah, it could begin to go into the general fund. It could go into a basic savings account, or they could open up some sort of investment vehicle as well that operates that for them. With all of that going on, what are some things that Brandy has already made a suggestion about the lodge having two different kind of vehicles? You have the endowment system plus some sort of what we've been talking about, some sort of investment track that the lodge can invest in to make up for that difference. What are some other things that you guys see on the horizon that could possibly shift the status quo and balance this equation so that it's not so detrimental to lodges? Because like I said on the opening, I'm not inherently against endowments. I think endowments could be a viable option, even administered by the Grand Lodge. But I think that the status quo right now is untenable.
I'm going to go back out on my limb, and I will say it once again. I said it in the last podcast. We're coming down to the idea of brothers need to really think about how much is masonry worth to me in my daily life. If masonry to you is worth $1 a day, then that means somehow in that year you need to figure out how to get $365 to your lodge. If your dues are $100, then an extra $265, why don't you give that to the lodge as, here's an extra $265. I'd like for that to go into an account for the windows or for the air conditioning or something like that. I know that as a past treasurer, if I had a brother that came to me and gave me extra money and said, I would like for it to go to this one, I could make notations in my books to this is for this one. I know that we had a brother that passed away one year. He was a former member. He left us, not 148, but another lodge that I was a member of, left us a substantial amount of money. And that was the money that we used to start the scholarship account at the lodge. And for the last few years, that's how the funds that we needed to match, that we were getting from Texas Masonic Charities, that's how we were able to get those matching funds, as we were pulling from that. Now, with that, if you're going to be doing something like that, understand that eventually that money is probably going to run out. You're going to need to be doing fundraising, like we talked about last time. But that's how that works with those types of things. So there are ways that your lodge can take those extra funds that are given to you and earmark them or do things. But the first thing is once you get that money, you have to have those conversations about what we're going to do.
I also think that I don't know a single lodge, or at least I'll speak for our lodge. If somebody were to come to our lodge and say, hey, I would like to donate an extra $265, and I would like to work with the lodge to set up some sort of investment vehicle with that $265 to make extra money for the lodge, I'm sure that we could figure out a way to open up a high yield savings account or
a CD
or something to start growing that other members might want to contribute to.
I doubt very seriously that we're going to look at them and go, no, we don't want your money.
No, we don't want your money, and no, your generosity is not welcome.
Yeah.
We're going to find a way, and I suspect most lodges are like that, that if you went to the worshipful master, the secretary, or the treasurer and said, hey, I have an idea, it's small, it's $100, that's what I have extra. Can we set up some sort of investment vehicle that other members might want to contribute to on an above and beyond capacity to help build us a legacy account that right now it's $100. In 10 years or 15 years, it might be $100,000.
And think about it, a lot of lodges out there, even out in rural Texas, at some point they had brothers that were thinking about that. They have some sort of legacy account. That's how they've been able to survive for these types of years. They had a brother back in the 50s that had a windfall or something like that and decided to leave the lodge. In their will, they bequeathed them $500, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, if you take $500, you put it into an account and it has accrued interest over the last 50 years or something like that, think about the amount that's there from that very, what we might consider a small gift.
And let's just pause for a moment to appreciate the word that is bequeath. Bequeathed. As you're driving down the road listening to this podcast, I want you to think about how ridiculous that word sounds. Bequeath.
And okay. So.
May the bequeath be with you. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is how to fix the system, because I'm a guy who, like, that's where my brain goes. If there's a problem, I'll solve it. That's my.
Thank you, Fresh Prince. Okay.
Yeah. That's my idea. The first thing that I thought of to fix this system, and I'm going to throw this out there for you guys, criticize it, tell me where I'm wrong, is to have a resolution submitted to Grand Lodge by someone, perhaps me, I don't know. Obviously this year it's too late to do that. But where we require by Grand Lodge law that the endowment amount must be minimally high enough to cover the per capita assessment.
The per capita assessment,
Which would be a minimum of any lodge at this point would be $1,000. So that every endowment in the state of Texas the basement would be $1,000
to cover that.
To make sure that
$750 or whatever.
To make sure that lodges are not being taxed by the Grand Lodge for the existence of a member on their rolls.
And I'm going to encourage anyone out there who's thinking of resolutions, and even my dear brother Evve, if you are going to put a resolution in, also be thinking about what are some of the things that you would take out of Grand Lodge law so that we're not just impregnating the Grand Lodge law with more and more. Let's just think on that for a minute.
Absolutely, I agree with that. What about you, Brandy? What are your thoughts?
For every new rule, take away 3 old ones.
Yeah.
I'm not mad at that.
Our president ran on that last time around.
I'm not mad at that. Let's make the Grand Lodge law book a little bit smaller.
I will say, when we're thinking about resolutions, how are we going to fix this? This is not something that is going to be easily fixed. We know that for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance to changing
Again,
anything about endowments.
the way that I like to think about it is there's lots of family business that needs to get taken care of with this one. Resolutions, ultimately, yes, it will probably need to come to some sort of resolution so that we can codify this into law. But I think where we start right now is instead of just automatically going to a resolution, this is where the conversations need to happen at the local lodges. Lodges need to start thinking about how they're going to deal with this, what is the situation that they're having at their lodge, and then keep the family conversation going, and it goes through lodges and we discuss and things like that, and then we come to a resolution on that one. Ultimately, I know the reality is that yes, that there will come a time where we need to put a resolution through on this one.
And my take has been that this is a problem that I'm going to say it. Grand Lodge caused this. The endowment system was codified into law. It is a problem that was created by Grand Lodge. And I think that the only solution, like we can try to navigate at the lodge level these problems, but how much damage is going to continue to be done financially to constituent lodges while we wait for that to happen? And how many lodges are still out there who still don't know how bad that $500 endowment that they've got really is? Because there's still a lot of lodges that have $500 endowments. And that blows my mind.
And I think the thing that we need to mention is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the endowment stuff started like back in the 90s. And if in the 90s it was $500, if your lodge had a $500 endowment from the mid 90s, we are now in the mid 2020s. And if you haven't adjusted that, oh boy, you haven't been paying attention to inflation or
if you had a
anything
child when the endowments were created, you now have grandchildren.
Yeah. Let's go with that as well.
Another solution that I thought through is restricting endowments to only members who are no longer alive.
Okay.
Because that eliminates a lot of the vacuum cleaner effect from our constituent lodge coffers.
They are, because those are $500 now. The posthumous endowments are $500.
But what I mean is that no living member moving forward can purchase an endowment. They can only be purchased by lodges for non-living members moving forward.
You can make it punitive with a dollar amount and get that same goal.
I'm just thinking that it's the living part that is the problem. It's not the dollar amount. You could have a $100 investment for an endowment on a non-living member.
Y'all never mentioned the crazier part too. You can finance the endowment over 5 years.
And I don't even want to get into the weeds of that, but that just makes it more affordable. And I think it's even a bigger problem, because if you can finance $500 over 5 years, then that just makes that $500 investment or that $500 endowment even more pernicious, in my opinion.
Well, and your lodge doesn't benefit until the endowment's paid off fully for a year. Then you get the money after that.
Yeah. So that is pernicious. That borders on evil to me in that environment.
I think what we're also talking about here is that if you're purchasing an endowment, and how do I say this without, I'm just going to say it. If you're purchasing an endowment and it doesn't cause you financial pain, then there's something wrong.
Somebody's being pained.
There has to be some sort of financial pain. People that make hundreds of thousands of dollars, if they're purchasing an endowment, it may not necessarily cause them pain, but it should.
At least should be an amount that regardless of how much pain or investment it costs, it should benefit the lodge. It should be a benefit to the constituent lodge, not a drain. And that, I think, is the problem.
It should give you a moment for pause.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The last suggestion that I have, and this is the one that I think is that I am the biggest fan of, I'm not going to lie. Pains me that the Grand Lodge does not have skin in this endowments game. That the constituent lodges are the ones, all of the skin in the game. We are the ones who set the amounts of our endowments. We're the ones who are either wise enough or not wise enough to set high or low endowment amounts. And the Grand Lodge ends up being the beneficiary of, if the less intelligent lodge's decision is, the better they benefit from it. Let's just be honest. And I think that if the lodge is going to give going to be expected to not recoup dues assessments, then we should have a resolution that makes all endowed members exempt from per capita assessments to the Grand Lodge, so that they are losing money too, and that means that they will be incentivized to make endowments work. Because until the Grand Lodge feels some pain from this, I don't think that they're going to have any incentive. They're going to continue manufacturing those stupid little cards that say, get an endowment and get a free life of membership to your lodge, which is just gross to me. They have no incentive to make this system work for lodges until they have some skin in the game. And right now, I don't see that they have any skin in the game. So by making members exempt who are endowed from dues, from per capita assessments, I think that puts a little bit of skin from the Grand Lodge side, and they will be feeling the pain that we feel as constituent lodges who are having these endowments that are not benefiting us and are actually ensuring that 47% of members are having to carry the expenses of an entire lodge, and to make up for the lack of income from the other 53%. And again, mind you, I keep having to say this, I do not begrudge any of those endowed members a single thing. I think that they are owed a dues-free membership, what they were promised. I think it is unconscionable to go to them and say, hey, the way that the lodge handled endowments in the past sucks. You need to pony up some more money. I don't like that idea, to go to a member and have to ethically explain why you told me that I was not going to have to pay dues, but now you're telling me that I'm a burden to the lodge financially and you need more money. That's what that tells me whenever I go to that. I think that we need to solve this problem so that we can honor the promises that we've made to our endowed members, and at the same time fix the system so that it stops being a giant vacuum cleaner in the accounts of our constituent lodges.
And I think that another thing that we should say is that if you are a proponent of the endowment system, if you are the biggest cheerleader for the endowment system, we would welcome you contacting us and letting us know why you have that thinking, where you see maybe some of our arguments are off kilter. Again, this is discourse. This is what we're supposed to do as Masons, as free-thinking men, is we are supposed to have discourse about things. We're not always going to agree. Brothers should never always agree on something, because if you're always agreeing on something, then you're never going to have cause for growth. So I know that the three of us at this table would welcome hearing from folks that are all in on the endowment system and telling us why you feel that way, so that hopefully we can understand your thinking and go from there.
And I think it's also worth mentioning, the three of us at this table don't necessarily all agree on what the best answers are. Just because I just threw out these big three answers that deal with resolutions and changing the way the endowment structure works, I know for a fact that Brandy probably doesn't agree with at least two of the ideas that I just spat out, and that is fine. We've talked about it in the past, and he's got some great ideas too. I think that idea that you brought up about having a dual system for an endowment and an investment account.
Just explain that $500 is for just your per capita. We don't get anything on it. Just as long as you explain that up front.
And as long as there's transparency involved in these things, I think that's the main thing. So much of the endowment system is opaque. Yeah. I have known people at the Grand Lodge level. You go ask two Grand Lodge members who pretend to know what the endowment system is like and ask them to explain it to you.
Yeah.
You're going to get 5 different answers from those 2 different people about how the endowment structure works.
I'm just trying to imagine where we'd be if in like 1948 all of our members bought $500, whatever $500 was then.
Yeah.
We'd be set.
Yeah, like every lodge would be set.
Yeah.
But the problem is that this is such a long horizon.
We would have a rough 30-year period though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're in that rough 30-year period where it's going to be a while for most lodges before they start reaping the benefits of having a large number of deceased members who were endowed that then offset the costs of the living members. It reminds me of the people who are critical of the Social Security system, who are really upset that a smaller pool of workers are having to pay for the Social Security of a large number of retirees that are coming to that age. It's the same sort of system where we have these endowments that we're basically carrying the costs right now for those folks who were endowed before us, and now the members that are dues paying members are being asked to shoulder the costs of all of these fees without their assistance and contributions.
I do want to get a point out there. Secretaries, go through your members, look at the guys that are 90 plus years old, see how many you've got, check on them. You might be paying assessments on guys that have been dead for a decade.
That is something that is definitely worthwhile looking
And,
for.
and Grand Lodge is not incentivized to do it for you.
Yeah,
Listen,
Grand Lodge is
as-
getting money on those members.
As a former secretary, I can definitely speak to this.
I found 6 my first day in office.
If you are not playing the angel of death sometimes, you're not doing your job. So go through your roles and look for those brothers and find out, are they still kicking and screaming? If lodges need to know that. But again, if you're a secretary and you're hearing this for the first time and you've never played the angel of death, you're not doing part of your job.
And also, I think it goes without saying, make sure the person is really
Yeah.
no longer alive before
Make
you
sure
grim
that,
reaper
yeah,
them.
yeah.
But that's so easy to fix.
Yes.
Call a Grand Secretary, it's turned back on.
Yeah.
And as secretary, make sure that you don't play Grim Reaper for yourself, because that's a little bit more difficult to fix.
That would be a problem. So, guys, as Cody has mentioned on several occasions, we welcome the feedback. We want to hear your comments, your complaints. Where are we wrong? Where are we? Where do you agree with us? Where do you disagree? That is how this conversation is going to continue out on the social media. So if you've got a question, a comment, post it on our whatever podcast platform you're using. Reach out to us, fortworth148.org, Fort Worth Lodge.
ForwardLodge.com.
FortWorthLodge.com. One of these days.
We're going to put a poster up here.
One
So
of these days.
It's
I will get that right.
FORT, not Fort
Yeah,
Worth.
no.
FortWorthLodge.com. .org.edu.
No, it's .com. The other one's cost extra.
.AOL.
.biz.
Anyway, reach out to us. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know where we're wrong. Let us know where we're right. We love hearing from you. We want to know what our brothers out there across the state of Texas are thinking. Let us know where you're from. Let us know what your ideas are.
Absolutely.
If you have any ideas for future podcasts that you want us to tackle, any hot button issues, any topics that are burning on your mind, also let us know about those things. We're going to be doing a resolutions podcast whenever we get the resolutions hot in our hot little hands, hot off the presses. We'll be talking about those and giving our thoughts.
Our Christmas present to everyone.
Yeah, it'll be a Christmas present to everyone. Right now, we all know that we got the names of the resolutions. It's, I don't know, if you're a Stranger Things fan, it's like getting the episode names for the last season
You're like,
of Stranger Things.
What's coming down
What's
the pike?
that one gonna be? Yeah, and there's a lot of resolutions. 30,
33?
right?
I think there's 33
Yeah, that's a
at this
lot
point.
of resolutions.
A lot will get pulled.
Yeah, a lot of them aren't going to survive. But the thing is, though, that's still a lot of resolution.
That's going to be a long day.
That's going to be. We're going to have to probably break that into a couple of podcasts.
That's going to be a lot of pin changes.
I know.
Talk about,
Do you know how many lapel? Imagine changing a lapel after every vote.
you know what? If you have 33 out there, which I know most of us do, ooh, it's
Yeah,
going
this
to
will
be
be great.
fun.
Yeah, Grand Lodge Bingo is going to be a blast.
Ding,
this
ding,
year.
ding.
Let us know what you think. Let us know what we can talk about. And so, with that, gentlemen, I think it's time for us to wrap up this episode. My name is Evve Kirkendall, and I'm signing off.
Brady Patton, sign off.
And this is Cody Cox signing off.